Hey there! So I thought what we would do today is talk about not this pen. This is a, I don't even remember what this is, but it's a pen, I think it's a Chinese pen that I reviewed quite a while ago. That's not the point here today. A couple of weeks ago I was at a pen meet in Calgary. Pen meets are always fun because you get to talk to people that are new and you get to try out their pens, etc. One of the people I spoke with was Sally, and Sally does very interesting things with nibs. So I said, well, you know, if you want, I could review one of your nibs. Now, what she does is hard to describe because she does all sorts of things with nibs. In this case, she lent me a nib that is a stacked nib. Do not look at this horrid feet. That's not her work. This is just a pen I had. She just lent me the nib. Those stacked nibs are exactly what the name suggests. Let me zoom in a little bit. I know this will not show the greatest detail, but it should get the point across, and I'll make sure there are actual high definition pictures on the website that you can view. So, a stacked nib is a nib that consists of multiple nibs that are stacked. So, hence stacked nib. It's not that difficult, is it? You can clearly see that here. So here we have a nib with then a second nib stuck on top of it, but there's also a nib beneath it. And the advantage of that is that I don't know how crisp and in focus this is, but the advantage of that is that you get this very expanded bit of nib tipping, which you can then use to grind in interesting manners. The first time I saw a nib like this was a cross-point nib that I have on a pen, which Sailor used to make. But then the nib, let's call it Nibmeister, who used to do that for Sailor, passed away. Those nibs kind of were halted. They are back in production now. But anyway, I have seen a lot of people all over the world try to replicate those kinds of nibs. And the sky's basically the limit. It was a very pleasant conversation with Sally, where she explained that she can do basically whatever you want as long as something still fits in the cap. And of course, that's the trick. At some point, you run out of cap space. I mean, you could put 50 nibs on top of each other. There might be some issues with the actual ink demand by such a nib, because you will see in just a second, this is a lot of tipping. But I mean, at some point, it won't fit in the cap anymore, right? And then, of course, that kind of ends that story. Now, as to Sally, if you want one of these nibs, and then I promise I will do a writing demonstration, which I think is the most interesting thing today anyway, right, to see how those nibs write. If you're interested, Sally conducts her business through Instagram as Sallymander Nibs. I will link to that on both the post of my website as well as on YouTube. This is how she does business. So please do not contact me for email addresses, phone numbers, fax numbers. I don't have any of that information. She conducts her business through Instagram. What if you don't have Instagram? Well, then I guess you won't be buying one of these nibs. Speaking of which, what is the price? She charges $175, that is Canadian, not US, $175 for a double stacked nib. So that will be two nibs on top of each other. And then for every additional layer, of course, again, the cap is the limit, right? But for every additional layer, she charges $25. I do want to point out, because there's always someone who says, that's too expensive. I do want to point out that making nibs like this requires you to know what you're doing, right? Because the tipping has to be polished in a specific way. The nibs have to be welded together in a specific way. If you don't do that properly, everything's going to fall apart and or be scratchy, and that will not work. So there is considerable handwork involved in actually creating a product like this. This is not the same as you take a stock Bock nib and then you grind it a bit and then you sell it for $100, right? Like there is actual work involved. Okay, so now that I have spoken at, I would say, great length about these nibs, really, of course, the important and interesting thing today is seeing how they write. Again, this is not a review of the pen. I just had this pen lying around with the feed that is severely mauled because the fins they put in those feeds are extremely brittle plastic. But it works very, very well. So, I'm going to do my best. Now, as you can see, this puts down rather a broad line, right? Here I happen to have a Armando Simoni Club pen with a one of their Magic Flex nibs, which I would say is about a medium. This is that nib. So as you can see, this is a very, very broad nib, and if you want a very broad nib, then this is a lot of fun. Now, second question is, what is this ink? It's nothing. I put an ink in, but there was apparently some ink in the feed left, so I got a very interesting mix. It doesn't matter, it was a Robert Oster ink, but this is really a blend of different inks. So let's try and put this nib through the ringer a bit. Basically what you have here is something like an extreme architect. So here we have with a stub, right? With a stub you would get a broad downstroke and a narrow side stroke. With an architect nib, that is exactly the other way around. You get narrow downstrokes and broad side strokes. Now often with these kinds of nibs, especially because there is so much tipping, again, check out the pictures on the website, which I'll take through a loop so you can actually see this thing up close, as well as a little bit of fiddling with what angle you use, because that can also determine the width of the nib a bit. So for example, here I'm using a fairly steep angle, and as you can see, it writes like a fairly normal nib. I would say that is a good medium or a somewhat skinny, bold, broad nib. I don't know why I said bold, but I did. So that's the angle. Now if I go down, as you can see, then you get a much, much wider line, right? So you can also play a bit with the angle in that way. Because if I were to have to write my famous grocery list, you got carrots, jetpack, tank, if you do that on a little sticky note, comme ça, your sticky note would be full really quickly, wouldn't it? So that won't work. But again, by fiddling a bit with the angle, this is all illegible, but as you can see, the writing gets a lot more manageable. Another fun thing that Sally does with these nibs is that you can flip them over and write upside down. And in that case, I feel a bit of feedback. Completely, I think it works. But you also get a much more manageable line width. Now, of course, the real fun is in using this in the widest setting and have a very fun nib to play with. If you're in the market for a nib like this, and especially if you are in Canada, I would certainly consider Sally because she is in Canada. These are fun nibs to fiddle around with and play with, and it can certainly add a certain bit of character to your handwriting. For example, I have my digital signature saved if I need to sign documents at work, and I did that signature with my cross point nib, which is 2 layers, so double stack nib, not triple like this. But so it's a little, I would say a little finer than this, but if you do an autograph like that, it is nice and wide. Yeah, try to imitate that, won't work. So it's also not really my signature. I did something a little bit like my signature because we are online. Anyway, but it adds a lot more character to it. So for that kind of stuff, this is really good. As to feed starvation, I'm going really fast here. No issues, even though this feed is clearly shot, but the top part works. I'm fairly impressed. So the final thing I will say is, what do I like, what do I not like about it? I think the work is good. The craftsmanship is very good. The nibs are stacked properly. You can tell. There's a level of smoothness to the sides there. Well done. Clearly the flow is very good. It is a smooth writing experience, especially when you hit that full, extremely broad sweet spot. Very pleasant to use. I think they look good. I've seen some people do this online, and the craftsmanship needs a little bit of work. It's easy for me to criticize because I don't know how to do this, but things look a little coarse around the edges. This all looks pretty clean and tight. So I think it is good work. Anything I don't like about it? Not really. I think the price is fair for the amount of work that goes into this. You're also buying a very specialty product, right? So I think it's fair to charge that kind of money for this kind of nib. You can have fun with it. You can put 4 or 5 nibs on top of each other. Why not? Again, as long as they fit into the cap. That's pretty much it. So if you're looking for something special, you're a little done with the regular round nibs, you want something really special, do this. The grinding is good as well. It works. There's nothing else I can say. It's fun. So, there you have it. Again, link to Sally's profile in the description of the video / website post. That's all there's to it. Hope this was useful, and I'll gladly see you later. Bye.